How we do this, we are the truest. Got these fangs super sharp, your shit toothless. Cold-hearted, yeah we ruthless. All the ghouls in the cut, let's get ghoulish. In the graveyard, acting foolish. Finna dance with the devil to no music. Cold-hearted, yeah we ruthless. All the ghouls in the cut, let's get ghoulish.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of a podcast called Ghoulish. I am Max Booth, an undead host, and today I am bringing you, once again, a live recording of one of the panels from the Ghoulish Book Fest that happened just a few months ago in San Antonio. Today we will talking about, fake monsters, with John Baltisberger moderating, and the panelists including L.J. Joseph, Ryan C. Bradley, Susan Snyder, and Bob Pastorella. It's a fun episode about vampires, kaiju, that creature from the that Netflix adaptation of Adam Neville's The Ritual. Lots of monsters that do not exist. You've heard of real monsters, now we're talking about fake ones. Vampires, NFTs, you name it. We're talking about it, baby. Well, I'm not. I'm just doing this intro. Then I'm taking the rest of the episode off. And if you happen to be sick of these live panel discussions, good news. This is the second to the last one. Next week is the final panel episode, and then we will resume, normal, standard, ghoulish episodes. But if you do want to attend next year's Ghoulish Book Fest in San Antonio, we've opened for badges already. Go on over to ghoulishbookfest.com and buy a badge. Next April, it's going down. We've already announced one of the guests of honor, who is Trevor Henderson, a.k.a. Slammy Swamp Ghost, a.k.a. the fucking cradle of Siren Head, man. Siren Head, man. That was his. That was a rough draft name. It's Siren Head, man. Anyway, Trevor's gonna be coming on down from Canada to do some spooky stuff with us. So if you want to meet him and ask him a bunch of questions about Siren Head, man, you can go get a badge. Ghoulishbookfest.com. And buy some books. Buy some spooky books at ghoulishbooks.com. It's ghoulishbooks.com. And if you want to find out the truth about the moon, go on over to www.moonfacts.org.
Alright, y'all ready to get going?
Yes.
We're ready to look, alright. Hello everyone, welcome to day 2 of Ghoulish Book Fest. This is the Fake Monsters panel where we will be discussing monsters. My name is John Baltisberger, I am your moderator. I am moderating this panel because I am colloquially known as Kaiju Poet. I've written a lot of Kaiju books, I write a lot of creature features, and I've written a lot of poetry about giant monsters. That is my pedigree. Rhonda, why are you here? What's your connection with monsters?
I love monsters, okay? So first of all, I write about them, but I used to want to be one too. And I think sometimes I am one. But mostly these days I just write about them. As R.J. Joseph, kind of out there, write academically about them too though. So, I got all your bases covered.
Mr. Bob?
Yes, I'm here because this is going to be a great panel about vampires, but
No, it's not.
but yeah, I mean, monsters. When I started writing, when I was a little kid, it was the Saturday creature features, and the horror comics, things like that. So to me, it's always there's a monster. There's got to be some kind of monster involved.
Susan, you and I went on a double date and watched Gojira in downtown Austin on the big screen. But what other than a love of giant kaiju makes you allows you to be on this panel with us?
Probably my obsession with shark movies, which definitely involves shark-related monsters. And just I'm obsessed generally with all monsters.
Hell yeah.
Big and small.
Yeah.
Ryan, why? What are you doing here?
I love monsters.
Or louder into the mic.
I love monsters. Qualifications. I've written for Wicked Horror for the last 7-8 years, reviewing a lot of monster movies.
Cool. Okay, so I'm going to lay some ground rules real quick, guys. First of all, we are not going to talk about the real monster is man. Look, we all know that. Like, that is a crux of horror: is man is real monster. Monsters and anthologies. I want to actually talk about the creatures and the critters. This is the monster manual of panels. And that's only a joke if you follow my podcast, which we have 2 listeners, so probably you don't. I have a question. Look, Zach had a novella of questions written, and he had planned out who he was going to ask each question. I do not. I sat down with my wife and I scribbled 6 questions, so I have to stretch this shit out. Bear with me. So instead of specific, what we're going to do is I'm going to kind of introduce a subject or a question, and we'll go down the line, starting with Rhonda, and kind of just discuss. If you feel like, oh, hey, I need to jump in here, feel free, and I will leave plenty of time. If you have a question in the middle, just throw up your hand, let me know, and we'll get your question answered. So first and foremost, I've already said, no man is monsters. No mankind is the real monster. Let's start by defining monster.
Okay, so a monster, really, and I'm not being philosophical with this, but really a monster is what society actually slaps that label on. So a monster is usually something that's so different that we don't know what to do with it. And typically it is labeled, it's deemed monstrous because it does things that are not great.
Bob?
Kind of carry on from that. I think for me, monsters are like an aberration of nature. It's like exactly something doesn't exist or you've never seen it before, and it doesn't necessarily have to be terrestrial. It can be otherworldly. It's like when we talk about cosmic horrors, people don't realize, well, we're part of the cosmos. We're deal. But it has to be, to me, it's an aberration of nature, something that doesn't exist, something that's unexplainable by any type of rational science. So that's, to me, that's what a monster is, just a creature.
Susan?
I agree with all of that, and I think monsters, it's like pornography. Like, you can't really describe it, but you know it when you see it.
Ryan, go ahead and talk about monsters. Follow that up somehow, I guess. Shit.
Damn. I think everyone's answer's been great. I think Susan's obviously crushed it. But I think it's a biological entity that threatens you. Threatens, maybe not just you, but humans in some way.
Okay, so to clarify, you're saying that ghosts are not monsters, then?
No, I think ghosts, robots.
Okay, cool. Unfortunately, these were all great answers. Unfortunately, you're all wrong. The answer I was looking for is monsters are cool. They're cool.
Oh, it was like, what are monsters?
Yeah.
Not what are monsters. Yeah.
Radical is the answer. Okay, so Stephen King. Stephen King has said that there are 3 monsters. There are vampires, there are werewolves, and there are zombies. That's it. Everything else is a derivative or a permutation of one of these 3 monsters. I have very strong emotions about this statement, but I'd like to know how you feel about that.
Yeah, see, I'm usually down with Brother King, but on this case, I'm gonna have to kind of say I'm gonna veer from that a little bit because a monster could be something like a haunted
Well, I think what Stephen King was saying is that, like, okay, if a monster is a vampire, it is a thing, a thing that feeds on others. If it's a werewolf, it's a thing that transforms. If it's a zombie, it's something that is alive that shouldn't be. But again, that's still very, in my opinion, simplistic. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if it's that way, then everything's a derivative, right? Because then the book that's a monster becomes the thing that's something it's not supposed to be.
Right.
So I guess in that case, I'm gonna have to let him make it and say, okay.
Right. Bob.
See, and
I told you we talked about vampires. I promise.
Yeah, I'm happy too. The $10 spot helped. Yeah, definitely. But I kind of agree with that because I mean it's like if you look at everything that you start, well, hold on, this ain't gonna fit in that category, but it does. But like, how do you explain like monsters? Like, what's that movie with the tire, Rubber? How do you explain that? How do you?
Rubber is a zombie, according to this definition.
Yes.
Look. I do not.
So it basically was undead.
Well, it's something that is alive that shouldn't be. I do not subscribe to this 3-tier system that Sir King, Mr. King,
Steve.
Stevie. I do not subscribe to Steve K's fetishization of vampires. How about you, Susan?
A vampire specifically, or
How do you feel about this trio of monster definition?
I think it's bullshit.
Nice.
Because like kaiju, for example, I mean they could be all those things, but it's like if you just say it, they're a thing that should not be. I know I heard it. I know it's the Metallica song, the thing that should not be. But yeah, I mean not necessarily. I mean because they could just be oversized versions of things like. The ants and them or something. They're an actual creature. They just got really big. I don't know. I mean, is that the zombie trope?
See,
I
feel like it's lazy. I feel like it's a lazy delineation of definitions.
Yes.
And I also, and I'm not trying to throw shade specifically at Stephen King here. Specifically, Jay Wilburn, who's downstairs, kind of mentioned that Stephen King said this, and we discussed it, and we both agree, like, well, he's wrong, but that's fine.
Do we even know he really did, though?
I mean, Jay Wilburn is, yeah. No, that's, look, man, now I doubt everything. God, now I'm suspicious. Is this in my hand or is it cake? I don't know. There's a Netflix show right now called Is It Cake? And it's the real monster.
That's it, not man.
So, I guess, I mean, again, I immediately jumped to like, well, what about a evil wizard who's a mastermind? Because, you know, what about a lizard man or, you know, what about all these other things? And I think what I was going to say is I think that this sounds like something that someone who is trying very hard to sound incredibly intelligent would say. And I have a lot of respect for Stephen King. I just don't think this was a very intelligent thing to say. Ryan, you've reviewed monster movies, creature features for nearly a decade. How do you feel about this classification of monsters?
I think it's one of those things where it's technically true. You could break that down to any monster into one of those three things, but I think it also flattens the monsters in ways that makes them very uninteresting. And so, like, yeah, technically you could do that, and you could probably also classify any vehicle into a car or a truck. But, like, it doesn't communicate the meaning. It really takes away meaning rather than add it.
I think that's a really, really succinct point. Because when we... that actually leads to another question that we can springboard into, and that is knowable and unknowable monsters. So if we look at the Alien, the Xenomorph from Alien. Alien is a fantastic horror film, right?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Did anyone disagree with me? I was like, look, hey, I got bamboozled by Jay Wilburn. I'm not infallible here. What about Aliens? I love Alien. I'm not dissing the movie. I just think it's a great action movie, not a great horror movie.
John, you do know that's just the plural version of Alien? You do know that, right?
No, it's a different word. There's an S on
more,
the end.
Right. So there's more of them.
But
Just making sure.
John, can you save me, John? Do you have a question?
Yeah, I can say.
No, please save me from myself. Ask a question, please, God.
You're doomed.
Son of a bitch. So, okay. Okay, what I was going to say is Alien is a fantastic horror movie. The monsters from that franchise, the aliens, the xenomorphs, and Predator, because I like Alien versus Predator, the comics. Promise, I have a brain. They're fantastic. They're interesting. They have a mythology. They have a folklore. They have there's books written about their biology. I think if you went this route and said, okay, well, they're werewolves because they change from the thing to then like they stop being interesting, right?
Yes.
But at the same time, the alien from Alien is interesting because it's unknown.
Right.
We don't know shit about it. It's a mystery. It's hardly seen. The suspense builds. And we can also kind of chat here about Lovecraft and Lovecraftian monsters and that sort of like the unknowable horror compared to monsters we know a shit ton about, zombies. At what point does knowing a monster make it more interesting, and at what point does that tip the scales to being less interesting?
So there's something to be said for not knowing what's coming for you. But for me, I mean, personally, as a reader or a viewer, if I know a lot about the monster, I'm actually more afraid of it. Because then I know its capabilities. Like, as long as it's unknown, like anything can happen. Like, I might be able to beat it. But if I know so much about it that I know that it's like almost impossible, well, now I'm terrified.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, if we look at like vampires, we a lot of the things that we can defeat the creature with are known. When they throw you for a loop and those things don't work, that creates excitement, that creates energy. But when you're facing it all, I think it all comes from if it's an organic thing or not. Like if are we in a world that vampires exist and we have vampire literature or not? You know, it's like, hey, what is this thing? How do we kill it? What do we do? It's that unknown thing to me it's fucking scarier. You know, it's like putting fear, fear of the unknown. That's the scariest thing in the world.
I mean, I actually like the hidden monster part of it because, like, shark movies are they're easily made because you can hide the shark for a good portion of the movie. And, like, some really good shark movies do that, right? Or any other aquatic movie, they'll hide the monster for a long. It's under the surface, and you don't know what is, like, tugging at you, and you don't know what's coming out of the depths, and you don't know what just bit you. Like Chrissy, the opening scene in Jaws, she has no clue what's going on. Like, she's just getting devoured from below the surface, and she's reacting, but she has no idea actually whatever killed her. I think that's pretty cool.
Yes.
And I think that's scary. It's just like you do not know what it is.
It's iconic.
And Ryan, again, I'm kind of asking you as a reviewer of movies and who's watched countless creature features, what do you prefer? Do you prefer seeing like a fully fleshed monster that's known, that they can like research and like go to the library, like, oh, it's supernatural style, right? They go and they research the big bad, and then they go on the quest to get the MacGuffin gun, and then they shoot the thing, and the MacGuffin gun summons Satan? Or do you prefer something like they have no idea what's going on the entire fucking film?
It depends on the tone and the budget of the movie. Because if you have like Vampires vs. the Bronx is a really good example of a movie where everybody knows the vampire lore and they play it for laughs as the story develops. And it's also a great movie. Everyone should go out and watch it. It's on Netflix. So it works really well if like that's your tone. You can also do the opposite way where like if you know the rules of having a vampire or a ghost, like Candyman's a good example of that, where you know exactly what it takes to bring Candyman, and you can play with it. You did it really well in Abhorrent Faith, where the people are taking the drugs, and if you've read Abhorrent Siren, you know that they're going to transform into a monster. And so you know that rule got broken, that you can't take the medicine, you turn into a monster. Now you're just waiting.
Motorcycles are the real monsters.
Absolutely. So that can work really well, but I think there's other. If you have a low budget, you should definitely, unless you can get a really good-looking creature, you should go unknown.
Having worked on low-budget projects, I've never been able to afford H.R. Geiger. Susan, real quick, jumping back, are sharks vampires, werewolves, or zombies?
Well, I mean, sharks are natural, actual animals.
Like vampires, then. Also, someone mentioned, it's a zombie because vampires are also undead. Werewolves are dead after you shoot them? Anyway.
Well, if you're talking about like sharktopus or a six-headed shark,
so you need like a Frankenstein.
we do. We have a
genre.
Sharkenstein.
But
Why isn't Frankenstein on here?
Because I think Frankenstein would be, by his definition, I think Frankenstein would be considered
A zombie. Yeah.
But like, would a golem from, not a golem from like pop culture, but from Jewish mythology? What about fairies? What about leprechaun?
Well, are they monsters though?
They're not human and they're killing. I'm just, you know what? You're the monster. So,
Sweet.
yes, John.
Proposal.
Oh shit. I'm married. I'm sorry.
Monsters can be separated into two classes, actually. Those that consume the flesh and those that consume something that is not the flesh. Stephen King's monsters, they all consume the flesh, right? I think at an elemental level, we are afraid of being consumed.
I think you're forgetting Colin Robinson.
I'm not familiar with that.
He's a psychic vampire who feeds on awkward situations.
Banal.
You should, by the way, I highly recommend What We Do in the Shadows to you. That said, so there's been tons of essays, theses, and books written about our fear of being consumed. Zombie literature is still huge. Cannibalism, there we go. Cannibalism literature and movies are a huge blockbuster genre for sure.
That's just one class. There's also the class of monsters that don't consume, the body, but that consume something else. You can fill the blank, soul or sanity or what have you. That kind of gets into the area of
That's just conventions, my dude.
so
They're soul crushing sometimes. Not this. Ghoulish is fine though. Lori's not. It's all of no. It is interesting because now we're classifying monsters not by what they are, but by what they feed on, what they take from us. And my only problem with that is I don't like. I personally, and I'd be curious if any of you disagree with me. I don't like identifying something by something else. I don't want to identify American Indians, for instance. There's a weird off the wall example. I don't want to identify American Indians by the colonization of their land. Like that's a shitty identifier. If we're identifying vampires solely like, they're identified solely because they drink blood. Like there's way more to vampires than that they drink blood. There's way more to any zombie literature than they just eat flesh. There's more to werewolves than, because in that, again, if you identify the monster, if we're breaking monsters only by what they consume, then it's not interesting. You know what I mean? You're right. I guess they're just territorial assholes?
no, okay, the first one, they turn you into an egg.
They turn you into a Yeti?
Egg.
Oh yeah, they incubate inside you.
Yeah.
Okay.
But there should be an alien movie now where they turn you into a Yeti.
I am
I am so into that.
Jeff
I wanna
Strand.
know.
Jeff Strand is writing that right now. I swear to God, it's already happening. It's on its way. We have manifested it into Jeff Strand's hands.
He was just eating dinner.
It's such a good name. Susan, you gonna work on that script?
Yeah.
Okay. I mentioned Lovecraft a little while ago because an audience member in Discord had brought it up. I don't want to talk about Lovecraftian gods. Like that's beyond the scope of kind of what I want to chat about. However, I feel like a lot of monsters are inspired by Lovecraftian lore. If we look at Quakers by J.F. Gonzalez and Brian Keene and Wesley Southern and Wiley and all these other authors, the Deep Ones and the Quakers themselves are Lovecraftian in nature. There was that deep sea movie with Kristen Stewart, where at the end
Underwater.
was it just called Underwater?
Yeah.
That sucks.
I like that.
I loved it.
Yeah, but the name sucks.
The name is kind of
Okay. At the very end, there's a Cthulhu, right?
Right, but that's what the great
And
thing
it-
about the title is, because I had no idea that was coming. Like, no idea that was coming. At the end, I was like, oh, we got a Lovecraftian movie.
They could have just called it Kristen Stewart's Shaved Head, and like that would have been just as fine a name.
But they didn't. They called it Underwater.
Which sucks.
Fine.
I have a question for y'all about Underwater. Y'all seen it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does the nuke work at the end? Does she kill Cthulhu?
I don't know.
Oh yes, and I have an answer. I have an
Does
answer
she?
why it kills Cthulhu.
Uh-huh.
Cthulhu has been killed by a narwhal and a like broken down ship running into it. I can't remember. It's in one story because I remember. Look, occasionally I read a book and it makes me angry, and I threw. And
Underwater made me angry because why do they have a nuclear reactor powering an oil drilling rig?
because fuck the environment. So anyway, it's not really a question. I just kind of want to know what's your thought on is that well run dry? Can we keep pulling tentacle monsters from a dead racist man's writing, or should we be making new shit?
You already know what I'm gonna say, right?
Say it, no problem. Do it.
We need to keep making new shit. We need to keep making new shit. I mean, because there's this whole idea that of course the monster or whatever we're afraid of changes with our lenses. So of course to me, like I'm a black woman, I'm middle aged, I'm urban, suburban sort of. What scares me? They not scared you, right?
Oh,
But-
I'm pretty sure it'll scare me too.
Well, yeah, because we.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I'm
Right.
sorry, you're talking to a poor Jew, so like, yeah, it scares me too.
Exactly. So those lenses are gonna change what the fears are. What are the monsters, right? I mean, to me, PTAs are the monster, right? Because I mean, I have kids in school, and I'm like, dress code now, right? So yeah, we need to be making new shit. I think that he just happened to do it. I'm not even gonna say first. He just happened to do it successfully, and so that's kind of what people follow. But I'm like, no, there's so many other creatures that we could talk about from different lores. Like one of the panels yesterday, talking about cryptids. I'm like, okay, look, if we talk about my husband's Afro-Latino, and we talk about these monsters, and I'm, here from the South, black, we talk about these monsters, and there's so many other things we could be doing that are equally frightening. So we should be doing new stuff.
Bob, with your obsession with vampires, do you think we should be discovering new things or writing about old things?
Well, that's a tough one because what I see now is talking vampires is that we are retreading old tropes. But the things that are really that I'm excited by is that when they take it and twist the trope.
Yes.
And we're starting to see people are diving into the older folklore, the European folklore,
Yes.
on how do you kill a vampire? Okay, if you read Dracula, most people who haven't read it, they're like, well, they killed him with a stake to the heart. No, they stabbed him and they cut him in the neck because they just killed him. That's how it ended. There's actually lore that tells you how to dispatch a vampire. That needs to be put into the stories. It needs to come back. So yes,
With a lot of old monsters, it's less about how you kill them and rather than how you keep them dead.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
There's a great
exactly.
movie on Shutter about that. The Boys Who County Hell.
Oh, cool.
Who are literally it literally takes place in the place where Bram Stoker was from.
Right.
And their vampires don't work the same.
Yeah, that
Cool.
was awesome.
I'll have to check that out.
I loved it.
Susan, new, old, Lovecraft, no Lovecraft. Is Sharktopus a Lovecraftian monster?
No. No, that's a
It has-
Roger Corman monster.
It has tentacles.
Titties and tentacles, Roger Corman.
Oh, let me write
You
that
forgot
down.
the rules with the Lovecraft. Yeah, titties, not so much in the Lovecraft.
Coward.
No, I'm a huge fan of Lovecraft, not the person, but the works. And I actually really enjoy like cosmic horror and all the branches that came out of that. And I like the Necronomicon. I like all of those, the kind of the mythos that surrounds Cthulhu. Like, I love that stuff. And if people can do something different with it, I like it a lot. But new, yeah, sure. I love a new monster. I love it when they come up with new things. Kaiju, especially. There's like a new kaiju, like I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like Cloverfield. I mean, yeah, I guess it's kind of similar to like the Host kind of monster, but like I really like that, and I like the fact that it was a baby, and then it was like that was cool.
Ryan,
Like it.
you have some Lovecraftian themes in your brand new book, Saint's Blood by Ryan Bradley. How do you feel about following and walking in the steps, monster-wise, of authors like Lovecraft and other pulp fiction writers?
I feel like I don't have Lovecraftian themes.
I was just trying to tie it in.
I appreciate you tying it in, though. I do like new monsters a lot better, and people making shit up. I think especially 1980s Possession, starring Isabelle Adjani. I'm not going to try to say the director's name. I think the monster in that is probably the coolest monster in film. Still haven't seen it.
So we love, like, we're all here because we love monsters. Like, we adore monsters, right? Like, that's the key thing. I assume you guys like monsters?
Of course.
I was, for some reason, I imagined myself turning around, seeing a room full of people just standing and cheering, yeah, monsters! And then I saw the 7 of you, and I'm like, all right, they're cool. It's fine. Literally 7. Ouch. Ouch, my pride. No, it's fine. Look,
It's the best 7.
it is the best 7.
Magnificent.
You'll notice my wife isn't in the crowd. That's because she has to listen to me talk about Godzilla 24/7, and she's fucking sick of. Max is in here for the same reason. I sent him like, if you look at our chat history, it's supposed to be like, hey Max, can we hear about a new monster? No, he doesn't. I have my opinion on this, but why do you love monsters so much?
I think it's human nature to kind of need a scapegoat. We need something to blame, right? We need something to say that's where all the bad stuff is happening, and we need to like go kill that, and then our crops will be fine. We need a reason. We need something that says, hey, something to explain what we can't explain. I like monsters because I really like the monsters that are very sympathetic, right? Like the ones that they didn't ask to be here. They're just doing monster shit because that's what they were created to do, right? And it's not their fault. So I kind of like that.
You like the
because
misunderstood monsters.
I like the misunderstood monsters because they didn't ask to be here. So do we really get to hate them? So yeah, I love all that monstrosity entails, mostly because that definition is so fluid. So like it changes, right? It used to be vampires were the monster, and then all of a sudden like they became the lovers, right? It's like, or you look at Frankenstein and you go, oh, the monster itself, we need to try to love it. It can become literate, like in that one, was it Van Helsing? Or he was like this brilliant being, right? It's like, oh, just let him be. So I like the malleability, and I like the way that definition changes. And so at once the monster might not always stay that way.
Bob, Blade versus Edward. No, I'm joking. I'm not gonna ask you who your favorite vampire is yet. But why do you love monsters? And yeah.
I mean, everything that Ronna said, but I mean, the main reason, it's very simple, because they scare me.
Nice.
I have always been scared of monsters. Watching those creature features in the black and white, and my dad's behind me sitting in the recliner going, you want to watch this crap? Take that to the theater. I'm like, shut up. And I'm like this the whole time.
Shut up, old man.
No! And it's because they scare me.
Nice.
That's why.
I like just I like the ideas of monsters as like mindless killing machines. Like I like that where there's just like you don't know why they're there, you don't know why they're doing this to you. They're just kind of coming at you.
Thus, like Gojira and sharks.
Exactly. Yeah, like what the heck happened, right? And they're, well, Gojira's got some political commentary underneath.
Yeah, but
that,
that's in the storytelling, not in the creature.
True. And but yeah, I just like the mindless killing machine coming at you, ripping you apart. Yeah, cool. You're just prey, and have a nice day.
Okay. Ryan?
Just on a visceral level, I feel like I'm afraid of the monsters, and I also want to be them. And there's like some power fantasy that goes into it.
No, I think that's perfectly valid, actually.
Yeah.
So when I first sat down to think about why do I like monsters, so I could, talk to you guys, I was like, well, monsters are the outsider, and I have often felt as an outsider, as I'm sure all of us have, right? And probably most of you as horror fans have felt like you've been outside plenty of times. But my love affair with monsters started with Dungeons and Dragons. I got my dad had an old box of D&D modules and books, and I pulled it out and I was looking. I was like, I could be a fucking elf wizard. I don't have to be this scrawny kid that gets beat up. This is rad. And then I found the monster manual, and it's a book with page after page of like fucking made up bullshit about made up bullshit animals and monsters, and it delighted me. I was in love with all the weird stuff that a bunch of middle-aged white dudes in the 70s came up with, tripping balls. And because, like, tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong about any part of that statement.
Not wrong.
The Fiend's Folio. Like, come on.
It all came from Sid and Marty Krofft. Come on.
It feels like it all came from Sid Barrett.
Yeah.
That was an LSD joke. So I've become this terrible nerd who like loves RPGs and designs games because I like monsters, and they were different. They were new. They were the power fantasy. They were the ultimate escape from my shitty human child shell. They could be mindless and destroy cities on the way, but they could also be me, right? And they could also be something I could blame. They were all those things wrapped up in one, and sometimes all at once. And it was super cool and super meaningful to me as a young kid, a young nerdy kid who liked to read growing up in Texas.
Yes.
And I'm sure I'm not the only one here who unfortunately had that upbringing.
We got ourselves a reader here.
I have been told you know too many big words, and that ended as I got stupider as I got older, luckily. And I also got told I was too effeminate for reading, which is like I'm still like that happened like 20 years ago, and or probably 25 years ago, and I'm still weirded out by it.
What is that even? What does that even mean?
I'm too effeminate. I'm too feminine because I read.
Oh, because you read.
Yeah.
I'm like, really?
That's just bad.
I'm not getting that.
It was a twofer. It's like being feminine's bad. Well, that seems weird. Also, reading is bad. That seems very weird, my dude. I feel like you have some unresolved issues with your mother to work out.
Right.
Okay, so we've been up here babbling and mostly listening to me, and I apologize for that. For the better part of 24 minutes, I'm about to go into the next part of the panel. But before I do you have any questions on what we've talked about so far? Anyone have any comments or any monsters you'd like to hear our opinions on?
The monster in The Ritual.
Oh, I like that one.
And everybody loves. You obviously haven't seen it.
I haven't actually.
It kind of looks like an enormous elf with a human body hanging off the front of the neck.
That sounds pretty sexy.
Human bodies stacked, right? Like it's like two torsos.
Yeah.
That sounds neat.
Just like
I love, so one of my biggest passions, not to do but to observe, is creature design and monster design. Like it is, I subscribe to a Patreon that just puts out 3D print files of weird monsters they design every month, and it's a joy. No, unfortunately not. I know what you're talking about, and it makes me so mad. This part of the panel is over, so you can stop talking. No, I love it.
But to address what you're talking about,
Son of a bitch.
here we go. That's if you watch the ritual.
Oh, that part. Sorry.
If you have watched No One Gets Out Alive, okay, both properties were written by Adam Neville. Completely different directors, things like that, but the creature design in both films is forming a Neville universe. Okay, which is, if you're fans of Adam Neville, if you've never read him, I highly recommend it. The Ritual is a great starting point. It warms my black heart, and I'm sure it warms Adam's too, because he's probably like, oh yes, mate. You know, and this guy, he's a heavy metal loving, and he writes some of the most vicious folk horror nastiness that you've ever seen in your entire life.
Oh, I love it. I gotta see that.
But that's a good example of a new monster, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I haven't read the guy's stuff, but like watching the movie, like as a movie viewer, I was like, I have not seen that before.
You know, I've been meaning
and it
to
was
read his book.
It was super clever too.
You know,
'Cause it's a god, and it's like a a deity, and then it's got like body parts to mimic a human at certain points. It can.
But yeah, he pulls in like from this old folklore mythology, but personalize it, makes it work for the story and all that, and embellishes on that, and gives these creatures, like in the book, the creature from No One Gets Out Alive actually has a name. So and it's not like a
Is it
a
Robbie?
weird, no, it's a strange name.
All right.
But it ain't. It's not like Norglock or something like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
So.
Also, I was going to say, an instance of Lovecraftian style stuff being used well, in my opinion, is The Mist.
Yes.
I really enjoyed that film, and I really enjoyed the monsters in that film. The little spider things,
Yes.
the giant things that are kind of obscured, which again goes to unknowable versus
Right.
And that movie mostly categorizes in the unknown.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyone who knows me knew where this was going. We're going to talk about kaiju now. How do you feel about kaiju?
Well, I mean, I grew up watching the Saturday morning horror movies too, so I mean, like, I just want the monsters. Like, I like them. I like big giant monsters, especially.
Excellent. That is going to bode well for you for the next few minutes.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, like, it's a whole part of the thing if you like monsters, and especially in my era, right, with my childhood time, right? You just gotta have to kind of embrace that. I mean, like, we were stuck in front of TV watching all the Godzilla movies, and we showed them all the kids. Like, I mean, we still watch them all the time, right? Because it's just fun.
Bob?
I like the Godzilla movies. I really like the one with Matthew Broderick.
Oh,
Okay, Godzilla.
I feel like I've been shot.
I do need to. It's okay. I need to inform you that that is not actually Godzilla. Like from Toho, who is the owner of Godzilla, the originators of Godzilla. Later on, they had that monster in a Godzilla movie, Godzilla Final Wars, I think it is. Its name is Zilla, and he shows up and immediately gets his ass trounced. It is a queer Toho, like, no, fuck you, America, Matthew Broderick. But I actually like. It's not a good Godzilla movie, but it's a fine movie. Like, it's fine.
It's
not fine, don't
I said that to get a rise.
I'm just trying to make him feel better. It sucks, and he sucks for liking it. I don't need to ask you anything, Susan. I know how you feel.
I wasn't supposed to tap the table. I did it.
Again, Susan and I, we bonded over our love of Godzilla when we first met. But how did you get into Godzilla's? I guess what I'll ask you.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, so the cartoon panel, I kind of talked about this. So
Were any of you at the cartoon panel?
So
Oh, they already know that.
In 1978, 79, there was a Godzilla cartoon, and I'm old enough where I was watching it,
I remember that.
and that introduced me to Godzilla, and I was like, awesome. And then I think I was probably 10 before I actually saw the movie, or any Godzilla movie. I probably wasn't the original at first. It was probably just one of the, Saturday morning creature feature things. Right. But yeah, the cartoon actually got me into it, but it's so bad. It does not hold up well. Have you ever watched a cartoon?
I have.
I've seen it.
Yeah. Ryan.
My uncles had a Godzilla toy, maybe for people who are listening, like 9 inches tall. And I just loved it as a kid. I don't think I saw a movie till I was like, I saw the Matthew Broderick when it came out, and I was like 9 or 10. But then, like, when I was in my 20s, I started watching them, and the first two are great, like, serious films, and they devolve into wrestling matches, which I like even more.
Yeah. I have so many opinions, but this is not the John Baltisberger panel. This is, for the audience, for anyone listening, a kaiju, the literal definition is strange beast. So technically, like, yokai could be considered kaiju, but as the kaiju genre has grown, what they are giant monsters. And a lot of times in the early days, they were just like dinosaurs, or giant versions. Like King Kong is a kaiju. He's a giant monkey, or ape. Ape? Gorilla. He's a gorilla. I know my monsters. And there's lots of things like that where it's just normal shit that's blown up. But it's a genre of movie that has been wildly successful since Godzilla 1952 came out. 52, 54, 52, right?
I thought it was 54.
Okay, 54.
I don't have a phone.
It's fine. Look, if I'm wrong about anything, just and you're listening to this, go ahead and send a tweet to Miguel at Tank Vila, letting know how angry you are. Or you can contact our HR manager at Joe Rogan and just cuss him out. That said, it's been a wildly successful franchise, and obviously had a lot of outshoots. One of those offshoots was Gamera, who is a giant turtle who can bring his arms into his body and shoot flames out. He eats fire, but also shoots it out to fly in circles. In the first movie, he was much like Godzilla. He was kind of a mindless monster. For those of you at home, my panelists are laughing at me, probably because I'm so handsome.
It's gotta be Gamera.
Gamera. However, starting in the second movie, he was like the guardian of Earth, and he fought a lot of alien monsters, fought a lot of other monsters. Everyone stare at Susan.
Okay.
She can't. Okay, Godzilla, as anyone has seen the newer Godzilla movies knows, Godzilla kind of walks this weird line where sometimes he's the bad guy, sometimes he's the hero who's defeating the evil monsters. And it's been really weird to watch that from a storytelling point of view. So I guess what I want to talk about, and we can also mention Power Rangers if anyone wants to, the dichotomy between good and evil in giant monsters. Go.
Yeah, so I haven't really been into the Power Rangers, right?
Maybe you should.
Maybe. That's debatable. I mean, I watched the movies. I don't know. The kids were watching it. I don't know.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
I'm familiar with Power Rangers and the tokusatsu genre. in
Yeah.
general. Is there a line between, are there, giant rubber monsters who are good guys in those stories?
I believe Ultraman at least has a couple of monstrous friends. You don't. You know, I'm going to say yes. I like giant monsters. I'm not a big fan of giant people, so I've watched far fewer of those. But that said, considering like Ultraman is still running, like there's only so many ways you can do it before you have some good giant monsters on there. Is my opinion. Anyway, don't sideline. Don't protect Rhonda. Go ahead. Answer.
Because I'm sitting here like, how can I parlay this
I don't
into,
remember the
like,
question.
Attack
It's
on
fine.
Titan? But yeah, no, I'm not into the whole Power Rangers thing.
Well, how do you feel about giant monsters being portrayed as mindless monsters versus being portrayed as like good and evil?
Yeah, well, see, I don't know that they have to be actually capable of thought to be good or evil, because sometimes beings are just inherently not harmful, which is what we usually consider good, right? And so just because they're not capable of thought doesn't mean that they actually can't be capable of either. But we categorize it as in based on intent. And so that's where the mindlessness comes in. If they are mindless, then do they really have the intent of being good or evil?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that we can categorize them that way if they aren't capable of disseminating it out on themselves. They don't have the intent.
Okay.
I agree with that. I tend to when it comes to especially Godzilla, I tend to follow the Blue Oyster Cult kind of concept. You know, he's both. But personally, I think the reason why that I will say that like the original Godzilla movies and Shin Godzilla, from what I understand, which I have never seen, but I will watch.
Please do. I'll watch it with you.
Because I heard it's very, very good. But to me, it's like, I don't think that this guy can have any intent because he's so damn big, and he's just like, to me, it's like, okay, crawled up, come on in, his arms don't reach anywhere, he's got a big ass tail, he's just knocking shit down.
Yeah.
And it's like, let's kill him, and he's like, I just want to eat something. What? Oh, look, there's a bus.
The pantomimes going on are a gift to the live audience that the podcast audience just doesn't get to have. I appreciate it. I saw Shin Godzilla on the airplane while flying to Japan.
Oh, wow.
Which, by the way, 10 out of 10 do recommend as like the way to do that.
It's a great setup, right?
Now, you've already mentioned that you prefer mindless. You want just wave of destruction. But I also know you do enjoy the Versus movies. So between those two, like, where do you want Godzilla? You know, and again, this isn't just Godzilla. There's countless giant monster franchises, movies, and properties like Abhorrent Siren. Where do you fall on, like, what do you want the struggle to be when you get two monsters on the same screen?
Well, for me, I don't think that like they're good versus evil. Like, I just don't think of that duality going on between them. It's just like two creatures fighting for territory or fighting to, you know, just like any animal would in nature. You know, they're fighting over mating grounds or, you know, who's gonna inherit the earth or whatever like that. And then I don't really like the fact that Godzilla is, especially in the cartoons, like when I was introduced, he was like the good one. They pressed a button and Godzilla came and like picked the boat up and put him away from the tidal wave or
It
something.
sucks so
Godzilla
bad.
was like their bitch. Like Godzilla is no one's bitch. So
That's
like
true.
I like my Godzilla to be
No, we will be his bitch.
yes, let them fight. Let them be bitches. But like he shouldn't be at anyone's beck and call. He's like his own creature, and he just happens to defend the area that he has, and so people might think that he's defending the people, but I never thought that. I always like Godzilla was fighting for his territory, not
Okay.
fighting for humans at all, because that would take away the
I like it. Yeah, I agree.
factor.
Ryan, and feel free to move this beyond just giant monsters, because like again, you've watched so many movies, like Jason versus Freddy, Leprechaun versus Jaws. Like, where are you on the good versus evil in monsters?
Where did I miss that one?
I
Don't
think-
you wish it existed though?
Only if it happens in the hood.
Look, what is what? Real quick, everyone. Lucas, what part of the ocean is the hood?
one around the corner, the one around the corner down the street.
All right, Ryan. Before Lucas so rudely interrupted you.
Yeah, so I think the good versus evil. I think I read a book about Godzilla and like the evolution of the series maybe 3 years ago by William Sweesui. And his argument, which I think kind of holds true, is like the first two Godzilla movies are purely targeted towards adults, and they're not good versus evil movies. They're fear of nuclear war and like what nuclear war and the atom bomb testings did to our oceans.
Right.
I think like Shin Godzilla follows in that, and it's like the best movie about bureaucracy I've ever seen. Like how do we overcome bureaucracy in times of disaster? I think it transcends everything. It's so good. It's like those kinds of movies are incredible, but you're not always in the mood for that. Like if I want to have 5 beers and watch a movie, give me Godzilla versus Kong, and that scene where King Kong throws the thing and hits Godzilla, and so Godzilla turns his head and then he jumps on his fucking back. That's the best.
That's good.
Yes.
The octopus fight is also real
Yes.
choice.
Yeah.
So we're almost out of time. Real quick, are there any quick questions? Any complaints? Max is back there. If you just want like yell at me. All right. I said Max, not Shane, not Andrew. Anyway, so go ahead and take a moment to yes.
I do have a question. I want Susan's read on Pacific Rim.
On Pacific Rim?
Yeah.
Oh my god. Oh my god, so good. Yes.
Pacific Rim 2,
No.
Pacific Rim Black.
I haven't seen that one.
Okay, that's fair. It's on Netflix. It's,
Okay, I guess
okay.
no. Pacific Rim is amazing. I
agree.
thought that they did a great job, and I mean Charlie Hunnam and Idris Elba. So hello. Yeah, I would have watched it anyway, to be honest.
I watched it on my knees too. Anyway, so real. See what I have to work with. If you would like to plug something, especially if you have a monster-centric story or book or anything featuring monsters, giant monsters especially, let the audience know.
Yeah, no, I have a collection that has some monsters. They're not giant though.
That's okay.
Now I gotta do that. So yeah, I
Yeah,
have
you
a
do.
collection coming out this summer. Hell Has No Sorrow, Like a Woman Haunted. Open for pre-orders right now. I do have the QR code downstairs. If you come and pre-order it, I have an extra special treat for you.
And to make sure the audience heard that, that is Hell Hath No Sorrow, Like a Woman Haunted by R.J. Joseph.
Yes, thank you.
Bob, how about you? What do you wanna plug here?
I got downstairs. I got Mojo Rising. It does feature a mind trippy tentacle thing, and But yeah, you gotta get there first. So, yeah, you gotta go through some Norrish stuff.
That was Mojo Rising?
Mojo Rising.
Mojo
Like the
Rising by
Doors.
Bob Pastorella.
Yes.
And Susan, you are sold out of Encyclopedia Sharksploitanica currently, but
Right, so that's on, you can get that on Godless, Madness Heart Press, Amazon. But I also, I have a Splatterpunk Award nominated kaiju story called Next in Line, and that's in an anthology called Devour the Earth from Madness Heart Press.
and it is downstairs.
Yep, and I also have a story in the new Trigger Warning.
Speaking Ill.
Speaking Ill, that's Fetid. It's called Fetid, and I actually create my own monster in that one.
It's very good. Ryan, you have a new book. Tell us about it.
So, Saints Blood is about a college professor who's kidnapped and has his blood harvested in Oklahoma. No monsters. My next book will hopefully have monsters. I do have one copy of Saints Blood left in my bag if anyone would like to buy it before I go home.
But you can also buy it on.
You could buy it on Amazon right now, and it will be on Godless, I believe, Friday, May 6th. So Friday of this week.
Oh,
Awesome.
That's awesome.
As for me, if you are not infuriated and irritated by the sound of my voice and the words I've spoken, I have two giant monster stories, Blood and Mud and Abhorrent Siren. So you can check those out anywhere you get books. And like Susan said, I'm downstairs with the Madness Heart Press, and we have lots of monsters because I like monsters. I like publishing monsters. So come and get it. Thank you all so much. And next thing will start soon.
in peace, Max.